All right, welcome back to the Level Up Grappling Podcast. Coach Brian here, straight out of PCI Jiu Jitsu, Mission Viejo, California. Of course, you know that the single authority and source of authentic grappling in Australia, Kangaroo Dundee himself, is in the house, Adam Tibbetts. We have an amazing guest today, Blake Artel, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu black belt and overall badass. Blake, welcome to the show. I want you to start us off. Tell us your grappling journey. We're going to get into everything. So I'll let you hit this off because you got to start with a disclaimer. So let's hit that first and let's get going.
All right. Well, thank you for having me on. Got to open disclaimer. The views expressed are my own and do not constitute endorsement by the Department of War, Department of the Navy, United States Marine Corps, or U.S. government at all. Now that I've said that, my jiu-jitsu journey, martial arts journey, right? I was born in Stockton, California. And when I was in sixth or seventh grade, I want to say it was sixth grade, I was kind of a small kid, and I grew up watching Power Rangers. So I always wanted to do martial arts. That was the thing. In my bedroom at night, I'd practice my jump kicks and stuff because I just wanted to be able to throw down. I ended up getting into Shaolin Kempo or in Manteca, California. Had to beg because my grandma and my aunt were paying for it because my family didn't really have money. But I did that for about a year. Promoted probably too fast, to be honest. I was on their demo team, and I thought I was the shit. So money ran out. Grandparents and aunt weren't paying for it anymore. Interpersonal or interfamily dynamics and whatnot. So I hit that point where it's like, okay, now what? And I remember I had this neighbor, like 3 houses down, who was really into this UFC thing. And he had like these videos, this guy named Royce Gracie. It's always the same story that you kind of hear about where someone finds jiu-jitsu, right? So I watched those and we would practice sometimes, and I continued just anything I could find on the internet, trying to study anything I could martial arts related, because I knew from the time I was like 5th grade when I grew up, I wanted to have my own martial arts school. I know what it was, but that was it. It's all I ever wanted was, that kind of freedom to do that. So 7th grade happens and 9/11 happens, which, big event. And that kind of changed my outlook and my future, but get to that later. It was, probably 8th grade, 7th, 8th grade, after leaving Shaolin Kempo. My buddy had a neighbor from Thailand, and dad was a Thai monk, really into Muay Thai. All he wanted to do was teach us Muay Thai. So I thought that was pretty cool. So I did that for a minute, not super long, but I did it until I felt it was too dangerous to go across town at night and train because, I got stabbed the first time in 7th grade. Guns pulled on me the first time, 7th or 8th grade, got robbed multiple times. So, the place I grew up wasn't exactly the safest, right? So I, at some point, assessed that was probably a bad idea for me to keep trying to go across town and learn Muay Thai. So I stopped, and sometime in, I think it was freshman year, me and like a group of friends are going around town, and I thought I was hot shit at 130 pounds, right? Thought I was really hot shit. No one could touch me. And there was this Taekwondo school called MVP. It was actually like right in front of my house. It said home of the champions, and like there's a million Taekwondo schools, right? So okay, great. So my friends were like, "Hey man, we'll bet you $20 you won't walk in that school and challenge their head black belt to a fight." And I was like, "Fuck, I'll do that." Oh, we walked in there, and it was late. I didn't even think anybody would be there, to be honest. But I wasn't gonna back down. It's $20 and it's a dare, and that's like, it was Wiener Schnitzel did 25-cent hot dogs back then. So I'm like, I got 80 hot dogs. I'm gonna get out of this. Let's go. So I go in there, and they're playing Halo. Like the head instructor, his name was Dennis Hernandez, and one of his students at the time, Brandon, I can't remember his last name, but they're playing Halo, and I was like, hey, I'm here to challenge whoever wants to fight. And they just looked at me like, yeah, 1 minute, let's finish this round. And that should have been the indicator, like I'm in the wrong place. Like a guy walks in, like, hey, I want to fight. And they take me as such a casual. They're like, I don't care. Let me finish my round, guy. But as soon as they, came out, they're like, all right, well, we're going to do it by their rules. It's an Olympic Taekwondo school. They're not the coach. Captain was TJ Curry. If you know anything about TJ Curry, he's a former junior Olympian.
Mm.
And he will absolutely kill you. And now he teaches clinics and stuff in San Jose, I think. We haven't talked in a while. But they beat the shit out of me. I totally earned it. I got kicked in the face so many times, really hard. And after that, I was like, okay, something to learn. Like, they kicked me, I got back up. That was it. That's all I had in me. Let's keep going. It's like South Park, Randy Marsh. He's like, I didn't hear the bell, drunk on his feet. That was me. So they ended up letting me train there for free, under the understanding that I would help clean the place and whatnot. Because again, we didn't have money. So I did that. I think I got to a brown belt there. And then it was about starting junior year of high school. No, I went through junior year. I had a girlfriend, and girlfriends basically kill everything. Because now I'm spending my time with her. But I would still go in every now and then. And one of the guys on the team, his name was Manny Rocha, who now he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu as well, owns a gym called Strive Jiu-Jitsu, I believe, out in Lodi, California. Another guy we haven't talked in a while, but he did a couple of like cage or MMA fights with some team. And it was 2006. And he's like, hey, man. Yeah, 2006. So my senior year, he's like, hey, man, we should go down to Phil Torres' school. And Phil Torres it's another Taekwondo academy in Stockton. And I was like, why? And he's like, there's just this jiu-jitsu thing. And I remember hearing about it, right? And I was like, man, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to roll around and get all sweaty with some people on the floor. Like, I don't want to do that. I'll just punch someone in the face. No one's going to touch me. And he's like, no, man, I think you need to experience this. He's like, Nick's out there, Nick Diaz, right? And I think he was just starting his run up with MMA. But Phil Torres was the school that they were doing Taekwondo at, I guess. Nick and Nate. So, and then Phil was doing, he thinks it's a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, but that's where they trained. It was a big warehouse in the Cuts. So I agreed to go. And once I walked in there, I see this, this mat, and there's all these people of different walks of life on there, and people I wouldn't even think twice about. Like, I will beat them up. I will punch them with all 130 pounds of my being, and they'll just break because I learned the secrets of grandmasters. And obviously, I'm kind of like jumping the shark on it, but you get my mindset. I was really full of myself, right? So I sit on the sideline. I don't want to start as everybody's kind of doing their thing, and then I decide to jump in, and there was this like probably 240-pound old guy, biker, beer belly, CZ Top style beard, and he had a bum knee with a brace, and he looked like he just got done smoking a pack of cigarettes, and he smelled like it too. And he pointed at me. He's like, hey, man, you could come warm up with me. And he beat the shit out of me. No matter what I did, I was dead. And he was a white belt, right? That's the important part of this too. This white belt. And I was so upset mentally. And I'm like, no, like trying to mentally rectify the situation and like make excuses for how we got here. But there was no excuse. It's just, it sucked. And everything I had done did not matter. So then I want to say Nick got on the mat, and then they were showing the old school bread and butter, triangle, omoplata, armbar, all those sequences. And I was so lost. And I didn't even finish the class, to be honest. I was, I don't need this. It's dumb, but mentally, it's like I went through trauma. So I joined the Marine Corps like right after that, within a few months, I want to say. 6-7 months of that. And in between then, the school that I was at was really trying to get into like a submission grappling inclusion. Wasn't the greatest, but to me and what I knew and didn't know, like, hey, that was something new to learn, right? Because the black belt owner of the Taekwondo school I was at was also a Pan Am wrestler or something like that. Pan Am champion or silver medalist, Pan Am's. So something like that. And he was like incorporating a lot of stuff. And I did learn some cool stuff there, but joined the Marine Corps. And then I did jujitsu in Pensacola, Florida for a little bit. It was like a blue belt running it. And even though I didn't know a lot, I knew enough to know that some of this was kind of not it, you know? Like that looked more like he was trying to pass off Hapkido and call it jiu-jitsu.
Mm.
Then I left there and went to Hawaii and trained at a place called Mad Tiger Academy. The guy who owned it, Eric Gu, um, and spent off and on for a couple of years. But I had some deployments and stuff I did out of there, so I didn't get to train full time ever because the life, right?
Mhm.
Following leaving there, still a white belt. Then I ended up in Columbia, Maryland, at Ground Control Columbia, and went there all the way at that time so I got my blue belt from Rocky Marcantoni. He's the owner, Ground Control Columbia. Um, he's a black belt under John Rollo and Henzo. Um, then I got my 4 stripes on my blue belt from Cesar Cabrera, who's also a black belt under Henzo, and then I had to move again. So then I moved out to Alaska, and went to the Anchorage AJJ, so it's probably Anchorage Jiu-Jitsu. And on my very first class, I go in there and they beat the shit out of me. Because the thing about Alaska is I'm sure they get people coming through as military, but like there's not that many places to train, because it's kind of like, here's Anchorage. You have like 2 schools at the time. And then otherwise you have to go way out to like Fairbanks. But they put me through the ringer of like every colored belt line up to roll with me. And by the time I got to their professor, Ryder, I think is his name. And he's a smaller guy, but he was the heaviest man I've ever felt. Probably 150 pounds, 160 pounds. And I almost puked just from his pressure. But I was stupid in desperation as a 4-stripe blue belt and tried to see if I could stall him with a rubber guard, which I don't actually advise people do. And then I tore my hamstring. Imagine that, right? So I ended up, trying to train as I could, but my job ate up 7 days a week, military recruiting stuff. Trained out there for a little bit, and then I ended up on my way back to Maryland. So 2018, now I'm on my way back. I got in a car accident. So I had to kind of wait for surgery and stuff, and it took me a while. And then just when I was getting back in to get back on the mat, but so
Mm.
gotta love it. So I had to wait for COVID to kind of lift some restrictions. But I made my way back on the mat and then trained under Max Jimenez. He was he was instructing at Ground Control at the time. He's under GF team. Um, Former I think ultra heavyweight world champ multiple times, and now he's doing his MMA thing. But I got my purple belt pretty quick because at the time I had been training off and on for 12, 13 years. But I guess I was supposed to get my purple belt before I left Maryland in like 2014, 2015, but I didn't make it to the promotion. So then I waited 3+ years, right? Came back and then I got my purple belt. After, I'd spent about 8, 10 months more on the mat. Then from there, gym things happened and Max left and we had a guy named Lucas. So I think he won last year's ultra heavyweight, if I had to recall, IBJJF. But I was primarily under a guy named Jason Goyer, good friend of mine. We haven't talked much since I've been out here in Augusta, Georgia. But there's that whole saying about like you need to fear the old man that's still like in a young man's sport or something like that. You know what I'm talking about?
Mhm.
And he's an
Yeah.
older guy and
Sure.
he was still in great shape and stoic type, quiet, but very respectful of everybody. And he would destroy you. And it was amazing. So me, with all the injuries I racked up over the years between military and just, jujitsu, I looked to him for like, hey, what do you see or not see I should be working on? So ended up getting my brown belt from him and Rocky, and then also got my black belt from both of them as well. And I think it was 2023 or 2024. I think it was 2020. Sorry, I'm bad with my timeline on this. But that was kind of my journey as far as getting the black belt. Lots of injuries, lots of bumps, lots of movements. And now currently I'm out in Augusta, Georgia, where the base here has a jiu-jitsu program they do that I'm the head instructor for. So I teach the military folks that are here on base, and we run a class 5 days a week, and we have 6 a.m.s and after hours, and I try to make sure the program keeps going, and also I try to keep people progressing. As you can imagine, I have lots of people in and out the door because it's military. So I don't have a lot of long-term students or longevity here, but a lot of folks that have been in the same kind of situation I've been in the past nearly 20 years.
That's awesome. And then you have your own program also, the mathematical
Correct,
jiu-jitsu.
I do. So mathematical jiu-jitsu is a thing that so a little bit about me. I'm kind of a nerd. I love math. Am I good at it? No. That's why I love it. I love chess. I love things, those types of thinking, right? So me being in the Marine Corps for nearly 20 years, as you can imagine, the way I think is going to be very much influenced by, I mean, my chosen profession, right? So a lot of things that I look at and the way I look at things is kind of in relation to Marine Corps doctrinal publications and, like, how do we fight wars, maneuver warfare, and things like that. So I've found over the years that the way I look at things does not exactly jive with, maybe the way that somebody else is explaining something. And it's really hard for me. I need to find a grounding, if you will. Like, what is the doctrine that justifies or helps understand why I do what I do or why I recommend what I recommend? Because otherwise, jiu-jitsu is often taught like Frankenstein, like here's an arm, here's a leg, here's a whatever, but what unifies it, it's kind of
Mhm.
missing. So I decided to latch on
Sure.
to my profession, so to speak, and teach off the doctrinal publications, and also the things that I recommend, don't recommend based on my time when I used to dig heavy into chess. Now it's only when I can. So thus came mathematical jiu-jitsu. Started a website that obviously, if you haven't seen it lately, it needs some updates. I know, and I have some folks from distance that I train, and I try to get out my way of thinking. I'm not John Danaher. I'm not a world champion anything. I just have a very different way of looking at things than what I often hear, and a lot of actually that you and I share from the conversations we've had.
Mhm.
So that's my
Yeah.
side project to my side project. That hopefully when I retire I can
Yeah,
dive in.
yeah, I enjoy your way of thinking because the conversations that we've had, you understand, you know, Adam and I's shared mind, so to speak, of it has to be brutal. Otherwise, why are you doing it? You know? Um, so walk us through your decision to embrace the violence versus embracing the patty cake. Because we've talked about this on the show before. There is a divergence, right? There's people that they're really focused on what I call patty cake jujitsu now, which is very sporty, it's very artistic, it's very pretty, but when it comes to actual fighting and any type of combat, it's completely useless. So walk us through your mindset because obviously as you're training and as you're coming up, especially in the kind of generation that you came up in, it's very sport jujitsu oriented, right? So how did you take that mindset and make that shift into the violent
So
side of things?
good question. By the time I got to Maryland in 2012, my white belt and blue belt time, um, you know, TLI, Team Lloyd Irvin, and all them, they were just down the road, right? And Keenan Cornelius was really big, and I was obviously falling in line. Like, I'm going to play guard. So I played lots of guards. I played lots of open guards, spider guards, and I was like 145 pounds at the time. I want to say maybe 150. And actually, Keenan's first video DVD he ever released, I'm one of the reviews on the back as a white belt, talking about, yeah, people are afraid of my new loop chokes and things, or something like that. Because I was catching people with opportunistic attacks, not really setups and skill, but whatever kind of junk moves that throwaways. Not to say anything about Keenan because he's great, but um, it was around the time purple belt. So I had actually broken like multiple places, just all down here. What happened was I was rolling with this like 20 or 21-year old, and I had just caught him in a really nasty bow and arrow choke. And he's like, let's go again. Like, he was upset and I'm laughing. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever, let's go. And I had a grip on his gi or on his sleeve. And when he went to break it, he shoved my hand deeper in it as he pulled, and it snapped my finger multiple, like it was twisted all around. So at that
Jesus.
moment, I see like white hot. I hold my hand and Max runs over and he just pulls my finger straight, thinking it's a dislocation. But like when I looked at my hand, my finger was down here, like it's all inside here. But
Oh,
class was halfway over, so I decided to put my hand inside my gi and I finished the class. And I only used my legs. And then I did the second class as well because I was already there, right? And I started triangulating everybody. And Max looked over. He's like, "You're better without your hand." But it's like I'm trying to survive right now. But what that kind of started
mhm.
to signal to me is in that moment, I'm in danger if my back is on the mat. And that was kind of the start of it, right? And then we go into at that time, where I was in my career as I started kind of progressing into the more senior enlisted ranks. I recognized that I needed to be a better student of war because that's what we do. If as the generations have changed, the people were leaving the service that had the time, like I had, going through Afghanistan and whatnot, and they're not much around anymore. So who's telling the young guys, right? Who's keeping their mindset? So it was from that lens. I then started getting really into high pressure games. Like Rafael Lovato is my probably my favorite rapper of all time. That was one of the first people I really latched onto, especially now. At his age, he's still hanging with the young guys, right? But taking a step back and looking at, okay, I used to try to compete in chess, right? I'm supposed to be a student of war. This whole thing with grappling is literally just another variant. The things are the same, and let's go to the books. Marine Corps Doctrinal Publication 1 on warfighting talks about breaking the will of your enemy. That's the whole purpose in the beginning. Like this whole thing, if you break their will, you don't have to go much further at that point because their will is what carries them forward, right? I mean, we could talk about all the things like their logistics and supply chains. We can talk about other factors of it. But if someone doesn't have the will to fight, there's no fight. You imposed it, right? It's yours. And that was where putting that along with, pressure games where people will just give you the pass. They just want it to end. That was what was like, I'm onto something. So I kept reading and reading. I think I probably read that specific doctrinal publication at least 100 times. In fact, since 2018, I think 2019, I've kept a copy in my car at all times because anytime I'm like, oh, I guess I got to sit here because my wife needs to run in and do something or whatever. Like I am reading that over and over. And that was where I was able to merge. Like, how do I stay mentally in the game with this and that? Well, the answer is putting them together because it's all related. Grappling is just another version of war, but obviously in a confined and no one's dying, but it's its own version of it where you get to use the same ideas and principles and apply it if you look at it hard enough, right? So to me, it's
Mhm.
doing jujitsu and getting to look at it from that lens became literally me doing my job and getting better at my job without being at work, if that makes sense.
Sure, absolutely.
So that plus chess, it all kind of
You
came
know,
together.
that's really, really cool. Is one of the things that, Adam and I talk about all the time, and I always push this on my students, is that concept of breaking the will. I always tell them because one of the I'll backtrack for a second. One of the first things that people notice if they come to visit me is I don't teach them a whole bunch of submissions. And they're like, well, when are we going to learn the finish? I go, you already know the finish. You have your option for finish. You need to first learn to break the will and beat them into submission where they hand over the thing that they're just done. And one of the things, I can say it, for Adam and myself, one of the things that we do a lot is how do you break their will on the feet first? Especially when it's a situation where there's no guard pulling allowed, right? Or even if they attempt that, how do you beat them down to the point where if they're going to pull guard, they're like knocked senseless? right? So breaking somebody's will standing and really understanding how to weigh on them, how to tie them up, and how to disorient them to the point of no return. They're so exhausted by the time you hit the floor, it's kind of like game over. And one of the things that I've kind of evolved to, at least at this point in time, is reimagining the top position. So even though I still break things down every month into one section at a time, we look at it as reconfiguring a top ride. So I'm like, as long as you're on top, and this really comes back to my training with Chris Howder and Hegan Machado and stuff like that, is when you're on top, you stay on top. And the first order of business is be the guy on top. There's no such thing as combat or war where, hey, you know what? I'm going to jump onto my back, let this fucker on top of me, and see if I can get him in a triangle choke or sweep him or something while he's got a gun to my head or he's trying to stab me or something like that. That doesn't exist. That's not real. So as for reconfiguring top rides, you create a situation where their hip control is gone. And it's something that I've noticed that especially in sport jiu-jitsu, there is a lack of attention to hip control and really riding the hips to the point that they can't turn. They cannot rotate. There is no guard recovery, and you're just on top of them and you're beating them to the point that no matter what they do, I always liken it to a video game. Like if you're playing Mortal Kombat or something, that every time you're engaging in these actions, the energy level goes down, it goes down, it goes down, it goes down to the point where it's just like they're immobilized and you don't have to chase after a submission, right? And one of the things that annoys me when I see guys just jumping back into leg locks or they're in a 50-50 position and they're playing footsies. When people hear me say that, they're like, oh, so you're not into leg locks. I go, I never said that. I go, but how are you creating a leg lock where you're in a dominant position where if you lose the leg lock, you're still in a dominant position to kill? Completely different mindset. It's absolutely completely different mindset. And Adam had sent me this video the other day of this turnover that was just so nasty. What did you call it, Adam? That turnover
It's a crotch
that you sent me? Yeah, it was a crotch lift turnover, but it's mean. It's really mean.
It's just a freestyle wrestling turnover.
Yeah, but when you add that into the point of putting somebody in that position and you're driving that pressure in, you do that to your average jiu-jitsu guy. And they're just gonna be like, "What the fuck?"
Well, I mean, isn't that the well-known?
They're probably
the
gonna
well-known
tap
scariest
on the turn.
person in the jiu-jitsu gym is that D1 wrestler that just walked in and said, "I'm a white belt." Right?
Yeah,
It's me.
Sorry, go ahead.
go ahead.
On that note about
Go ahead.
like the hips, it's funny you bring that up because like when it comes to doctrinal publication again, so that's the whole foundation of how I look at things, right? There's something called centers of gravity, and then there's critical vulnerabilities, right? And I try to look at how I structure and what I do based on trying to impact my opponent's center of gravity, which the spine is like, your biggest one, or your neck, your ability to breathe for that matter, right? And it doesn't have to be the neck, it could be the lungs. When it comes to the hips, that's one of the big things that me teaching white belts, let me open with, I don't believe a white belt should wear a gi. I do not believe in that, but it is what it is. And if you're coming through me through mathematical jiu-jitsu, I will tell you, do not wear a gi if you're a white belt. But we'll talk about that one after. But to the point about the hips is I believe that white belt should be purely concerned with the hips. I mean, if you look at jiu-jitsu or grappling in general, your most dominant positions are mount and our back, right? And I will argue that the number one most dominant position is belly down If you belly down somebody, their hips in the ground, and they can't build height, they're done. They're immobilized. Their will's going to break right then. I don't need to apply
Done.
a sub.
Yeah.
You're just done. So, right. So I try
Yeah.
to train
It's
people to
death
think of
sentence.
that's always your number one. We're looking for that. But the thing about that is you're owning their hips, right? You own their hips when you do this. Mount, you own the hips. So with that, and this is going to sound kind of counter a little bit because I don't believe that you should train someone to get comfortable on their back as like their A game. A guard is the best thing of the worst position. You're in a bad spot. The best thing you can do is find a guard before you get back up, right? If you need it. But a closed guard, why is the closed guard so difficult to deal with? Well, it's because you're arresting somebody's hips. He who owns the hips is offensive. He who has their hips dominated is defensive, period. So when I'm talking to people or I'm teaching white belts, I try to enforce like everything we're doing is about advancing the position, but you're looking to always control their hips. If you own that, you're winning. Now, you could argue from a self-defense perspective, absolutely closed guard, you are not winning. You're going to get your face punched in. But in the eyes of jiu-jitsu, you're still in you could be considered dominant because you're still offensive and they're not. Depends on the perspective. But regardless, get on top, stay on top. Rule 3, go back to rule 1. Right. But if you're going to be on bottom, it's about hip control. But no one thinks about that anymore. They're jumping to what's the new meta? Oh, a million leg locks and hit this like inverted whatever. It's like, guy, if you can't even arrest my hips, like the moment I see you grab my leg, you might get it the first time, but you're never getting it again. Right. They're missing that whole positional philosophy. And the beauty is most of the times I'm winning a match, I'm not submitting you. You're giving up. You're giving up because my positioning is so uncomfortable or painful that you don't want it. So I don't need a million submissions. My position should do it for me. But the strategy, everybody learns a million moves, but no one talks about the actual strategies behind it. The most basic fundamental strategy in grappling is to own the hips. But I've never heard that in a class, ever. It's just, here's the technique, guys. It's amazing.
Yeah. I think to your point, because I agree with you, because I think there's people that come to train with me and they're kind of a little like, why are you talking so much? I'm like, because I need you to understand why we're doing what we're doing. I can't just have you jump into something and then you walk out of here and you go, well, A, it didn't work, or B, why am I doing this? Well, I need you to understand why we're doing it first. So I always have that explanation ahead of time. And then at the end, we always have a question and answer like, okay, let's sit down and do a collective meditative reflection. What worked? What didn't work? Why didn't it work? Or what did work? Why did it work? And getting people to understand the hip control, I think is one of those things that, to your point, Blake, the reason why a lot of instructors don't talk about it is because they don't know. Everybody was taught the same way. You just learn a bunch of moves, right? Your triangle to armbar to omoplata. Everybody learns that. And you're going to just do this. And here's your, here's this sweep. Here's your tripod sweep. Here's your scissor sweep. Here's your, whatever, spider guard sweep, blah, 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 blah. Okay, that's great, right? Those are all really cool moves. But, where in that conversation is, how do you adjust for hip control? And I was lucky in the sense that while it wasn't articulated to me at the time by Chris Howder or by Hegan, I felt it, right? I felt it in such a way that it was so glaring, it couldn't be ignored, because the way my hips were shut down, it was alarming. And the one thing Chris Howder did used to say, he didn't give me the explanation why, but back in the day, he used to say, if you're not controlling my hips while you're in my guard, I'm standing up. And I make this joke. He would say that song, he would sing that song, I'm Coming Up, that 70s song, while he was preparing to beat my ass because I wasn't shutting his hips down while I was in his guard, in his close guard. And for those people that don't have the opportunity to train with somebody like that or train with somebody like Hegan, you don't understand what it's like where you think like, okay, I'm going to be safe here in the closed guard and I'm going to do this, this, and this. And then you realize, wait a minute, I can't move my hips. I can't move my legs because my hips are shut the fuck down in such like a scary way where you're just immobilized. And then the guard passes, or whatever, the transition is just, whatever. It is what it is. It becomes such an afterthought because of the way it's shut down. And there's a precision to it where it's just like, you're not moving. They're not giving you the opportunity to move. They're not giving you the opportunity to stand up. You're just there, and it is what it is. And you're stuck. And no matter what you do, it feels like there is like an iron stake shot right through your hips to the floor. Like there's no rotation. And that's been my obsession, over the years, especially when I was really focusing on teaching, where what is every particular way we can do to maximize the efficiency of shutting down somebody else's hips? And it's definitely evolved over the years. For me, it's evolved over the years because I've found newer ways to shut down the hips and more effective ways to shut down the hips. Whereas it's like, okay, I like this better. I like this better. And because I get a lot of guys here that come train with me that are law enforcement or they're feds, that's their primary concern. Like, how do I keep this guy down? Or how do I hold this guy down? Because either you're dealing with a fugitive that it could be very strong or very creative, right, in their physical presentation, or they're dealing with some perpetrator that is high on some very, I don't know, extreme substance like PCP or meth or something like that, where what people don't understand unless you've been engaged in those combative tactics, you pull out a 9mm and you shoot them, they're going to still come. They're still coming. You can keep popping them, boom, boom, boom. They're coming right at you. You can break their leg. They will stand up and they will come at you. So shutting down the hips is truly an art form. And that is, like you were saying, has to be an obsessive focus. If you understand that, you will start to understand how to break somebody, But to me, it always starts standing, right? It's just like, if let's say it's just somebody of sober mind, let's move the drugs out of it for a second. And you're in some type of combative format, be it a competitive grappling match or even in battle, you have to break their will. They have to carry you to the point where it's just like, I can't take it anymore. And that has to be an obsessive pursuit, in my opinion. It has to be an obsessive pursuit.
Especially the stand-up point. That's one thing I noticed a lot, that at least in my time going through the belts, that stand-up was always one of the last thoughts, because everybody's like, oh no, we're going to do this today. I just want to roll, man. Slap hands, let's go. But different mindsets, right? The stand-up game and getting people to carry you was one of the things I had to work on the most as a brown belt. Again, going through the mental part of this, like, it doesn't matter if I can't get somebody down, but again, I need them to wear out, because I'm 185 pounds, right? And also, my injuries are various, but if I don't have a way to get you to where I'm comfortable and where I've trained, then all I've done is train for nothing, right? And I will say, at the end of the day, talking about that person on PCP, the only submission that's going to matter at that point is when you put them unconscious, right? But you got to be able to get there. So I spent a lot of time working on stand-up, and specifically, I was a really big fan of Hudson Taylor. His stuff I thought was really good, and when I'm trying to help illustrate points to folks about, again, making them carry you, I always recommend people go check out any of his stuff, because I found that he has a really good way of teaching it from his background of wrestling, as he started getting into jiu-jitsu and teaching with that too. But most people in jiu-jitsu don't think about that
Mhm.
because they get the lie walking in the door, right? What I mean by that is no one typically will walk into, and I'm going to make up my own numbers here, right? Because I don't have a statistical or a study to back me up. But at least in my time I've been teaching now, which is almost 10 years, I have yet to ever have a student walk in the door and go, I'm here because I want to be the next world champ like Hodger Gracie. I've never heard that. Someone walks in, I'm like, what are you here to learn?
Mhm.
Or what's your interest that brought you through the door today? And they're like, self-defense, get in shape, maybe sense the community might pop up and, compete if that's a thing. But I didn't hear in there that they want to be this sport specifically. Self-defense is always rooted in there. And then what happens is they get put in a gi and they work on spider guard. And then one day they're a purple belt and they don't know how to take somebody down. And then when they need it, they can't do it. And also because they've been working only in gi, that lapel grip doesn't work in a tank top. So, maybe they made they made grapplers for people that only exist in cold climates, when you're wearing lots of stuff to hold on to. But things get lost on the time for the sake of sport, right? So, you talking about having to think about making them carry you and break their will from standing, I'm 100% with you. And that's what I try to also enforce for when I'm teaching folks within, as much as I know to this point, and I'm consistently trying to learn because, this whole thing's consistent learning. But there's a lot of folks that don't even want to, and they don't understand that they've been fed a lie and a false sense of security within that.
Yeah. It's kind of like, I don't know. It's kind of it's a false sense of security, and it's also a delusion because they hear this statistic that it was a kind of like a skewed law enforcement statistic of what percentage of fights end up going to the ground, right? And they say, well, since 90%, 80% of fights go to the ground, you don't have to worry about that. You're just going to go and just attack somebody and they're just automatically going to fall to the floor. Well, no.
Or one punch is going to put
Just
them
look at
down,
Adam's
right?
face. Yeah, that's not true. I mean, you start watching, like I love watching sometimes these YouTube videos. I call it the Cholo windmill. You have all these cholos fighting each other with the tank tops and the baggy pants. Yeah, they're hitting that windmill and they think they know how to fight. Where you have those ghetto chicks and they go and they're grabbing each other's weaves and they throw them around. Somebody's wig falls off or somebody falls. And they're flopping and rolling and stuff like that. But that's real. Those are real presentations of how people engage in an actual street fight situation. So understanding when you have people that they don't want to go down, you better understand how to get somebody to go down. And really that concept, to use a Japanese term, and I hate throwing out Japanese terms, but whatever, the concept of kazushi and understanding kazushi, which means to off balance, but the multi directions of kazushi and how to off balance somebody is incredibly important. And understanding like really how to break somebody. Like we do something that's very unique. It's different. Where I'm always talking to them about, I need you to break the plane of their ankle. So you have your ankle stability here, but the minute you break them on the outside, they have no stability. So we spend a lot of time in my group focusing on how to create angles where when we're pressuring them, we're breaking their ankle stability. And once you understand how to fine tune breaking ankle stability, it is amazing how you can control somebody. And it's shocking when that person falls down because they don't realize how much value they were placing on the stability of their ankles, especially if they're not trained. They're not training, and even people that are and they don't understand. I get guys all the time. They'll come in And I go, okay, here, watch. And they're doing this, and they're fighting. I go, now do the same thing that you're doing, but collapse the ankle. And then once they see that, they're like, why is it so much easier? I go, because that's the foundation of how you're standing. It's easier. It's much easier to defend yourself in a standing position if you're just working linearly, forwards, backwards, because you can always make an adjustment. But the minute you go and find that lateral break, changes the game completely, because you can't stand. You're done. But you just have to weigh on them. You have to understand how to create that off balancing and how to rip somebody to the ground, to where you're in a dominant position. Because I see people, they fall. I watch these YouTube videos, they're falling and then they're all flopping around. And then you have some guy he pulls guard. And then they try and do something and they're doing this. It's amazing what YouTube has been able to do, right? People that have no business fighting at all of a sudden they watch some YouTube stuff and then they start messing around with their friends and all of a sudden they think they're fighters. Then they go out. Yeah, it is. In a sense it is. But then they go to death roll and what happens? You try that with one of Adam's guys. Then they get the death roll. Fucks them up. So, yeah, there's levels to it, right? But you have to understand. And I one of the things I really appreciate about what you're doing is you're giving people an education, the why behind something, and really getting them to understand the philosophy of how and why something will work or why it won't work, and it eliminates a lot of the fluff. And it's not a lot of us that are doing that, to be honest with you. It's very few of us that are doing that around the world. But for those of us that are eliminating the fluff, it shows, because it really breaks the spirit of a lot of these competitive jiu-jitsu guys that they think, oh, I won a medal, so I can get this on everybody. And this is like, no. If I don't agree to play your game,
that's been my goal, especially the
work.
past probably 4 years. Starting out, I wanted to learn everything. If there's something out there to learn, I want all of it. I still want to learn everything, but the reality is, like, there's not enough days in my life to actually sit there and drill everything and go through. I was talking to one of my my current students about 3 days ago. And he's a blue belt, and he's like, I really want to learn, I think he's like the 411 position and this, and that. And I'm like,
what the hell is that?
More leg stuff, right? And I'm like, hey, man, like, you probably should take a step back. And, at least I told him, my view, white belt, you got to be good at these certain positions and self-defense with it, right? And blue belt, you start opening up your open guards and what I would call distal positions, right? So non-controlling the hips, then you start looking at it. And he's there, but the problem is his transitions still need work, his passing needs work, and the why needs work. Like, it shouldn't be, I put my legs up, my hands are on my head, and I'm not saying that this is always the case with folks, but I'm like, past my guard, and instead of them looking at it and saying, this is what he's doing, and this is what I need to do, they go, well, I know this technique. Well, let me try that technique. What about the, it's like button mashing in a video game. It's not going to work. So I tried telling him, was like, hey, how about you start with top control, start with close connection. And I was, point up some things. And I said, why don't you rep something out, which I know eco folks are going to freak out on different conversation. Why don't you rep something out until you can't get it wrong, and then start looking at how to apply it, increment by increment, get your body mechanics on it, right? Get the smoothness with it. But, looking at him and his journey, and he wants to jump to this deep end when there's these parts that go before it. What I told him was, if you look at colors, how many primary colors are there? 3, right? 3 primary colors. But if I look at a rainbow, or I look at, like a painter has like all their pastels and stuff, there's a ton of colors, but at the end of the day, there's only 3. And if I could teach you to recognize those 3, then I could teach you how to combine them. I don't need to drill a million things to make a million things work, because I understand how things work. And that's because I spent the time repping out this thing. That one thing I spent 1,000 reps on, I now see everywhere, and I know now how to break the parts. Don't get lost on thinking I need to learn every color that exists. Worry about your primaries, and you're going to see that they're all related. So then you're going to get better a lot faster. But in the beginning, it might seem like you're getting better slower than everybody else because you got caught by the new meta. You got caught by this new thing. It's like, well, you're going to bypass. And also when it comes to teaching, that's where these principles come from. It was a class 2 weeks ago talking about guard passing, and the guy wanted to play open guard. So I'm passing open guard. And I pointed out that all I have to do is avoid the space between his legs. So if I look at on top of him, like 360 degrees, his guard is maybe at most 90 degrees of that. So my first goal is to get around the 270, right? Because then all his offense is gone because his left and right limits are between his knees, right? So pointing that out, I'm like, guys, you're working way too hard. Why are you walking through where someone wants you to be? That's the kill zone, literally. Surface and gap. There's a big gap. It's called their back. Let's try to get over there first. Try to get outside the legs. And if I could just teach a class before we even start whatever guard pass, hey guys, we're passing open guard. The goal is not to walk through the guard to begin with. We're going to go around it. And if you leave with nothing but that, you're going to be so much better in the end. Right? We don't need to learn a million different things. Although I still love learning things, right? I still want to. But there's not enough time in our lives for us to be a master of everything. But we can absolutely get those principles down.
It's funny that you say that because I literally was just talking to a couple students yesterday about the exact same thing. It's so weird. It's like tuned in. Um, a lot of my students, because the way I set stuff up, I always encourage them to go train at other places, go to open mats and play with stuff, go everywhere and see. And one of the guys was saying, I'm having a really hard time. And this guy is no slouch. The guy's a black belt. I have black belts that come train with me. I didn't give them their black belt, but then once they're black belts, they're like, I just want to train with you. And he's just like, I'm really having a hard time with these guys with their open guards, and I'm trying to get through their guard. I'm like, well, why are you trying to get through it? Why don't you go around it? Right? Same exact thing. And he's just like, and I go, I've showed you this before. And I go, why are you trying to split them? And you're trying to do this and do that. And you're doing the sporty knee slice and this and that. I go, I don't understand why you're doing that. And he's just like, well, what should I be doing? I go, do whatever whirly twirly thing you want to do from the open guard. Show me the legs. Present to me exactly what they're doing. And then I go, okay, so now what you're going to do, instead of doing that, I go, watch, I'm going to get past your open guard 100% of the time. So I kept cutting him on the outside, same side leg to same side leg, pressuring him in the inside, pressuring him on the outside, dropping onto his hip and pinning him down. And he's like, okay, you got to do that again. I don't know. I did it for like 10 minutes. And then I had the next guy do it. It was like, for 10 minutes, we're doing this. I go, there's no way that you're keeping me in the middle and you're not going to split me with your legs. I go, I'm going to keep cutting you on the outside every time. And I go, you have to focus. I go, the other thing that you need to focus on while you're hitting that outside, I go, what joint are you controlling? Right? Because the PCI system, pin the closest joint. You got to grab a joint. I go, you need to have that heel, that ankle, grab it. Rip it to you and hold it to your hip. Then when you're pressuring into their knee, you're breaking it. You're completely breaking their hip control. They have no hip rotation if you're breaking that leg, because everybody's trying to, again, it gets down to kind of going along with that position and not putting the heat on the position, right?
Funnily enough, it's interesting. Blake was just talking about the kill zone, yeah, and going around it. And you're talking about that. In all of jiu-jitsu, and I had a lot of problems with jiu-jitsu, yeah, coming to it as a wrestler. Yeah, I constantly get choked out because I get turned to my stomach. I'd always turn to my stomach out of habit. I'd get my back taken all the time when I was first starting out and choked out repeatedly. I could take down everybody. Nobody could stop a takedown and nobody could get out if I held them down. But if they got a slight advantage, I would turn to my stomach. So the whole wrestling concept for me was always a thing. And the easiest thing that I found in jiu-jitsu was open guard. Anytime somebody used open guard on me. Yeah, because exactly like Blake was saying, it's go around that kill zone. Yeah, don't go through the middle of it. But what I always did was go, okay, here's my kill
Package.
zone. Do this. So constantly, I would literally just leg lace everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Boom, leg lace, bang, onto their back, choke them out.
Yeah.
I'll just turn them onto their stomach just by doing a reverse leg lace. In freestyle, they're on their stomach. We leg lace to turn them onto their back. In jiu-jitsu, they're on their back with their legs out. I leg lace them to turn them onto their stomach. Literally just defeated the whole thing of open guard. And I was like, well, okay, that's interesting. Please pull open guard. It's the only time I win.
It's these little concepts though, like I've been to tons of gyms over the past nearly 20 years, right? And every time I walk into a gym, I've never heard these things. I hear, here's the moves, or here's the warm up, here's the moves, let's roll, or some variant. And what's funny about that is I've actually had, like, when I first got here on this base, and I inherited this program from another guy, and he was teaching that really traditional thing, but he didn't. It was like he would go on YouTube and be like, okay, what's this? And that's not me trying to disparage the individual. It's just he was doing the best he could, right? And I wasn't doing that, and I don't think we need to roll 30 minutes every day, because you're going to roll tons and all these other classes. If I'm going to be teaching, I want you to learn. I want you to look at this as a actual class, right? Like chess, if you want to get better at chess, it's not by playing a million games. It's going to be from studying, drilling, and applying those, and then you play your game as a result of it, right? That's kind of how I look at it. So a lot of folks were actually not happy with some of the changes, because they were like, well, I want way more rolling. Give me more and more and more. And I'm like, well, all you're doing is reinforcing bad habits and opening your injuries, because you haven't learned and drilled enough of the actual parts that you need to apply. But that, with, again, the missing principles, like, it was at 6 a.m. last Monday. One of my instructors is teaching guard passing, and I pulled him aside after, because he showed, like, I think 2 or 3 different passes. I'm like, hey, do you know what the core principle of passing an open guard is? Like, or a closed guard? Like, what's the number one thing you're actually trying to do? He kind of looked at me like, what the hell are you talking about? And I pointed out, all you're trying to do is separate your hips from their hips. Do you realize that's all it is? Just separate our hips. And he looked at me, I was like, oh man, I didn't realize that. I'm like, yeah, now no matter how you teach, I want you to enforce this, because now no matter how many millions of ways people learn, they're going to understand it's all the same thing. And if we were able to enforce those things, people get better so much faster, or, well, in the long run, right? At the gate in the beginning, they may not, because they don't have all the things to pull, but once the connections happen, they blow past everybody else.
Absolutely. So I'm curious, you said, and I'd like you to kind of share with us your philosophy behind
100%.
this. You said that a white
100%.
belt shouldn't start in the gi. So walk us through that opinion, realization.
There's a
that
reason
position.
why
Walk us through
wrestlers
that,
will
what
walk
you mean
in
by
and
that.
be your fastest promotions to blue belt. The reason why is because they've been grappling, number one, and number two, they have body awareness. Number three, they actually know how to grip. I myself fell into that trap as a purple belt who didn't touch no-gi, maybe like 10 times. But then when I went to no-gi, I'm looking for that lapel and I'm looking for that sleeve. And I don't understand that, when I grab somebody, the power of my grip is between my middle finger and thumb. But instead I'm grabbing with all my hand, and I'm wondering, why can't I hold somebody? And I'm not able to find that part on the wrist from sliding, my hand down. It's just these little nuanced parts when you're talking that weren't being picked up. And I thought I was safe because I knew good loop chokes and I knew whatever. And then what I realized is I'm in danger, right? So right out the gate, I realized that's probably not good to base somebody around something dependent upon clothing. But let's take a step back even further. Gi is more complex than no gi. I will fight anybody on that. And the reason why is because you have more to attack and more to defend with. There's more considerations. That does not mean it's harder for the sake of, the grapple, but
Yep.
it is more complex. If I want to teach someone to be proficient, do I give them calculus? Let's say math. Do I give them calculus before algebra? No, right? You start with something that's easier to understand to build their proficiency, so when you get to more difficult topics, they have stuff to draw on. And I relate gi exactly the same way. What I learn in no gi, I can do in a gi. What I learn in a gi, I can't all do in a no gi. So I don't want anybody from underneath me that I hand a belt to be reliant on something that's not going to work. And once, in case of lapels and things like that are all they know, I want to make sure that they have that translation going across. So for the sake of less complex and carryover, I'm always going to recommend they do not touch a gi. And in fact, for mathematical jiu-jitsu's sake, I do white and green belt. I don't go straight white, blue. Green belt is where you put a gi on, because now I want you to learn the things you did in white belt, but let's apply it with some extra stuff, right? But they're completely separate out the gate. I do not want anybody to fall into that trap of what I did. And no one told me I was doing it. It was that false sense of security, Absolutely not. I personally do not recommend starting a gi. Do not do it. Start in no gi, build your proficiency, then translate it across and let it get more complex.
Very interesting. Yeah, I know I've mentioned this before on the show. While I've never had the opportunity to train with Hickson, I've been able to train with some people that have spent a lot of time with Hickson, right? Over the last, I don't know, at least 5 years, my coach, Chris Howder, has spent a lot of time. He's always going out to Florida to see Hickson and train with him and this and that. And then I did years ago, I think when I was a blue belt, maybe, I would do these private lessons with Henry Akins, who's a black belt under Hickson. And I asked, what did Hickson do differently? The way I felt what he was doing was very much like catch wrestling, because it was much more brutal. It was very violent. It was very physical. But the number one thing he said to me, and I saw this even with the way I've seen Chris Howder evolve his game, is he would never use the collar and the sleeve. Never. He said Hickson always used head and arm control. He was never using the sleeve grips, and he never used the lapel grips. He was always collar tying. He was grabbing the wrist. He was doing these things that were very, I guess, for lack of a better term, wrestling based. His grips were very wrestling based, and his intention was much more wrestling oriented than what you would see with other people. Everything that Henry showed me, everything, 100% of what Henry showed me, that was Hickson, derivative, none of it, and I cannot emphasize this enough, none of it had included a collar and a sleeve grip. It didn't include gi grips at all. At all. And it's unique because that's never been, from a jiu-jitsu perspective, that's never been translated. A gi jiu-jitsu perspective, that's never been translated. It's never been digested that, hey, this guy who's considered this monolithic figure of jiu-jitsu, he's not including this component that you guys are obsessed with. And you see over time, I go, hey, dude, I'm a guitar player. I got to keep my hands nice, so I've never been obsessed with those collar and sleeve grips. Even back in the day when I was doing judo and stuff like that, if I felt somebody ripping the grips, because that happens all the time, people don't understand how violent the grip exchanges are in judo unless you've done it. It's violent, and you can break your hands. And a very good friend of mine, we came up together in judo, and, we've known each other since we were 12. We're the same age. He's completely arthritic, gnarled, this and that. I think have very pretty hands, But the reason why is he'd be holding those grips, those judo grips, and he'd be fighting out of them. I'd be like, fuck that, dude. And he's a bass player. We'd play music together. I'm like, what are you doing? We got to play. We have a gig next week. What are you doing? And he would be holding on for dear life. I'd be like, fuck that shit. But you see people early on where they're like, I can't do this anymore. What do? I guess I have to switch to no-gi. I'm like, you don't have to switch to anything. Just stop obsessing over these grips. They're like, oh, I don't know where to grab. I'm like, well, what's the intention of the grip? Right? The intention of the grip is the hand, grabbing the hand, grabbing that collar tie. If you don't have a good collar tie, you better get back to basics. Go
when
fly
it comes
out to Brisbane,
to
go
wearing
to
the
Death
gi,
Roll,
you
and
know,
learn a
like
proper
the number
collar
one
tie.
thing that
That's what I have to say.
we're taught out the gate with the gi is whoever owns the grips is gonna own the rest of it. And it's pretty true, right? If you get that dominant lapel grip, a cross grip on me, you're offensive, and I'm trying to break that to react. So out the gate, it's going to be fighting to the death on the grip. And when going against a judoka, I've done that plenty of times. And once that grip happens, it's not coming off. It was somewhere in my purple belt time, I realized at the time I was like 170, 175 pounds, and Max Jimenez being like 250, when he would grab something, it didn't matter how hard I tried. I could put every effort of my being to breaking his grip. It would never happen. And that was also one of those things where, looking at his hands, looking at my hands, or I'd broken it and I'm trying to get back. And I was like, man, I got to figure this out. So I actually started trying to base my game on if someone has a collar grip, letting them have it and use it against them. I like to think I'm pretty proficient in it, but rule number one is just don't let them get to the grip to begin with, so we don't have to do that battle. But now, like when I'm rolling with students, and I get a grip, I am not going to hold on because I don't want to walk into that position. I don't ever want to. I get really bad tennis elbow, right, and it'll radiate all the way up to my arm. So now I have to do like almost gripless. I'll do something the moment they want to pull it, I'm done, which goes back to, again, the translation of no-gi being so great and why I won't recommend it out the gate for a gi for white belts. At some point, you're going to get older. It's all going to hurt. I'm already there. So I'm not recommending it. Yeah. You too. But part of that's also led into a little bit of a different topic, but related.
We can all agree on that. Yeah.
How do you make people make the mistakes? Because as we're getting older, there's certain things that the younger people can get away with that we can't get away with. And I have one of my current students. He's a purple belt, and when we first rolled together, he was a really big guard player. And I was trying to emphasize to everybody, like, guard is not good. I don't care. Guard is the best of the worst position. Stop just dropping to your butt and scooting. We need to learn how to stand. We need to learn to get on top, right? Roll one, get on top. Roll two, stay on top. Roll three, go back to roll one. Let's do this again. And he sat down to play butterfly. So I immediately cut an angle like he thought I was going to pass the outside. And then I shin rode him to hell. He tapped right there, right on that ankle. And then we slapped hands after he was done holding his ankle, and I shin rode him to hell again. And at some point he was like, what the fuck? What is that? And then I pointed out, look what happens every time I touch his ankle. His neck comes forward. I'm like, guys, think strategy, think long-term, right? I don't want to walk through the kill zone, but if I could bring that center of gravity being, his ability to breathe to me, why would I do the work going through, right? Again, strategy, principle, all those things go together, like fight the grip. Don't hold on for the grip for dear life. You don't want to get hurt. Why go through the kill zone if you can make them bring their vulnerability to you? I think those things just get lost until they get injured. Then they're going to realize, but then it's too late. They look like me, or I guess all of us in this case.
Yeah. I think setting them up for success in the beginning with proper fundamentals and philosophy, like you're saying, we're not just passing on moves. And I think you're onto something, Blake. We're passing on of philosophy and intention and education, especially when we're talking about martial arts and submission grappling, submission wrestling, all this stuff has to go beyond well, I taught this move, so then you know it, and blah, blah, blah. Then you teach it to the next person. We cannot divest ourselves from philosophy of the fundamentals, mechanics, and the practical intent. Because at the end of the day, martial arts is for killing. Okay. So if you don't understand that this is combative, this is combat, and you're completely kind of divorcing yourself from its intent, you're not teaching properly. Sorry.
I don't mind
think
if
you
my
are.
students want to do sport, right? Like competition out here in Augusta is massive. The students are all about competing all the time. And I personally, like, it's never interested me because kind of exactly the point you're making that what this is about, right? And also balancing that with my career as far as when injuries happen, then what, right? But I always try to emphasize again the mindset, guys. This can be a fun sport, but what is this actually about? Are you actually safe? Or are you building comfort in the things that you thought were safe? Again, going back to shin right in the ankles, people think, oh, if I play butterfly guard, this is good. It's like, man, you just gave me your ankle. You're done, right? I don't have to do anything. I only need to move forward. You're just never going to want to do it again. And if you spent 10 years playing an open guard and a butterfly because you're thinking of the sport solely because when you walked in the door and said, I'm here to learn self-defense and all this, you got fed the lie and you didn't realize it, then you're 10 years too late. And thank God no one has found out, or you haven't had to find out the hard way, right? And that's one of those things that kind of bugs me. Again, I don't mind that they compete. I don't mind that they're sports focused. Doesn't bother me at all as long as when I'm teaching, what I'm trying to get through is that you can go learn spider, you can go do all those things, but if you don't know this first stuff, none of that matters. And, you know, how I kind of break down the belts in my mind, like I told you, white belt is, it's arresting the hips. Passing, there's some retention, right? But I want you to be able to get back up because if you can't get back up, then you're dead. So let's look at it from that mindset. You got to have some ability to, I want you to be able to control the head for your takedowns, right? If you don't have a concept of power flows where the nose goes, right, then we're already kind of lost there. But positions that arrest the hips. Then if we're looking at blue belt, then that's where you start looking at the distal positions, right? Like side control, and learning how to actually use it, north-south and things like that without the emphasis of getting to mount. And same thing, working now more below the hips types of guards and things, but the mindset still has to be there. But purple belt, attacking systems. And to me, the main attacking systems are not attacks for the sake of being attacks, but they're positions. A guillotine is not just a sub. It's a control, a headlock. If I have your head, I have a lot of control. A Kimura or a double wrist lock, right? It is not just a submission. It is a control. If I have that hand to your body, you're going nowhere, right? I have tons of control. Or in a hip lock, the same thing. And branching off of those. And I tell folks, if I'm going to recommend them past Brown, then that's where self-exploration, do your own thing. But if you can't hit those wickets, you're missing something. And I hate when I see out the gate, this guy goes, I'm a wrist lock master as a blue belt. And I'm like, but you can't pass a guard. Or you can't take me down. Or, you know, if I pass your leg lock entry, you have nothing to do. And in fact, instead of taking mount, you roll back to your back. Like, what are we talking about? We've divorced too far. The mindset's missing.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's wrap this up. This has been exciting, enlightening, and just out of my own ego, I like when people agree with me and Adam. All right, Blake, how can they find you? Tell us about your website. If somebody wants to
So you can
train
find
with
me.
you
So my
privately or
email
come
is
to a class,
mathematical
how do
jiu-jitsu
they find you and
at
reach out to
Gmail.
you?
I also have mathematicaljiu-jitsu.com. Those are probably the two best ways to get a hold of me. If you're a military member aboard Fort Gordon, the Fort Gordon Combatives Club, you have classes every night, 17:30 Monday through Friday. We have some 6 a.m.s also that we do, and we're always looking to add more. That's probably the best spots to get a hold of me.
Awesome. Love it. And so I do want to introduce a couple new sponsors to this show. Guys, Nevin Eyewear. amazing stuff. You're going to find the links. I'm going to send the links because they won't let me I can't do a straight discount code, but you can still get the discounts. So don't worry about it. So Nevin Eyewear, they have amazing glasses. I use them for writing every single day. They're polarized. They have a lifetime warranty on these things. If you break it, you lose it, you scratch it, they will replace it free of charge. And you're not going to get a better deal than that. I prefer the Peter Steele ones. I was a huge Typo Negative fan, still am. Those glasses, they fit great. They do exactly what I need. They're polarized, so I see everything crystal clear when I'm out riding. Innovation Wellness, for all of your peptide and weight loss needs, I will put a phone number for them down at the bottom, as well as a link to the Instagram, so you can get them that way. And then, of course, as you know, our old favorites, Road Gears with a Z, GEARZ.com, and SpartanCans.com, discount code LUG, and we'll hook you up there as well. And with that, gentlemen, we are out of here.